Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here with an unscripted video. We're going to try summa tangentum, to help me not talk about that one episode of Scooby-Doo or theorize what would happen if a cartoon Great Dane was attacked by a xenomorph from the Aliens franchise. I've jotted down some notes on my hands to try to keep me focused on the things I want to talk about StarCraft. The prompt for this is, for the first time in my life, I finally beat the campaign for the original StarCraft and Brood War, except for playing a little StarCraft 64 as a kid and it being way too hard for me. This is my first time beating StarCraft, so I'm still kind of on a high of, yes, I beat that sucker. I am not that good at StarCraft. I will never be able to be competitive. Almost no one can be competitive with the South Koreans in StarCraft, but I don't want to embarrass myself. I'm not that good at it. But I really enjoyed the campaign. I'm really getting into StarCraft now and the history of this franchise because it's got a 20-year history. It's got a great community of people who play it actively and make cool custom stuff for it. So the prompt for this video is I want to talk about a theory which, if you are a StarCraft fan or a Halo fan, this is probably a really old hat discussion. I've seen arguments on this on forums going back to 2005, but I have a spin on this old hat debate, which I think will be fresh. And so even if you've heard this debate before, I've got a interesting spin on it for you. And that is, did the Halo franchise take significant inspiration from StarCraft? Did they freaking rip off StarCraft? And if you are either a fan of StarCraft or Halo, or especially if you're a fan of both franchises, I'm sure you've probably made these connections yourself almost immediately. It's a very natural thing for the human mind to make these kind of connections. Okay, so what are the races in StarCraft? Well, you've got the Terrans, who are humans. You've got the Protoss, which are this ancient and very beautiful, technologically advanced alien race. And you've got the Zerg, which is this insect hive-like swarm of monstrosities. What are the major races in the Halo franchise? Well, you've got the USNC, which are humans. You've got the Covenant, which are a religious collection of aliens, including elites who have a visual similarity to the Protoss in sort of how they walk and how they fight. And you've got the Flood, who are this zombie-like alien monstrosity. And that's just a really obvious observation. Tons of people have made that. And on internet comment sections, the debate usually goes like this. Someone says, Halo totally ripped off StarCraft. And then someone says, no, they didn't. Halo's totally different. And the Flood, they're more zombie-like, and the Zerg, they're more insect-like. It's not a rip-off. And I saw a really funny one where someone thought that StarCraft ripped off Halo because they got mixed up on which game came first. Okay, so that's the internet debate. And what I'd like to suggest to you is there's a bit more of a subtle way of putting it than saying Halo ripped off StarCraft. And that's, I'm pretty sure Halo took strong inspiration from StarCraft, but remixed the story. And this is my spin on it. The reason this is interesting is because it's a great illustration of how storytelling works. Because when you think about it, most good ideas in fiction and fantasy and science fiction and character ideas. William Shakespeare has probably written everything there is to write about the human psyche and human drama that could be written. But new storytellers have to take all these old ideas and remix them. And one of my favorite illustrations for this is called The Cauldron of Story. So storytelling is like this really ancient soup recipe that's been passed down for millennia from chef to chef. And every chef gets the soup recipe, and then they mix up the big cauldron of story soup, and then they add a few of their own ingredients into it, and then they pass down the recipe to the next generation. So the soup is always there. It's still got that similar substance to what it's always had for millennia, but it's constantly being adapted. It's constantly being added to. And if you look at Halo and StarCraft from this perspective, it's not so much that Halo ripped off StarCraft. It's that Halo looked at StarCraft for a great model for alien fantasy storytelling. Monstrous aliens, beautiful aliens, and humans. And then it remixed that, changed up some of the races a little bit. It maybe took inspiration from some of the names and changed them up. Arbiters are spaceships in StarCraft, and the Arbiter is a major character in the Halo franchise. I look at these as loving homages, not blatant ripoffs. Because what Halo did do is then it added its own original elements to it. Halo added the first-person shooter gameplay, so it's a completely different style of game to play than StarCraft. It focused more on Master Chief as a viewpoint character than StarCraft's story does. It changed up the nature of the alien race. So the Protoss, I look at them more as a very noble race of aliens in StarCraft. The Covenant's more of a mishmash, kind of an intersectional mishmash of religious cult members. So it's got a different feel to it, even though you could dumb it down to a similar template. If the dumbed down version is pretty aliens, ugly aliens, and humans, then the complete experience of playing the games gives you a bit more of a feel for, how the flood feels more like a zombie-like, or I don't know, like pukey threat, whereas the Zerg feels more like a monstrous threat. The Zerg have, big teeth and big claws and acid spit. The Flood are a little bit more germ-like or infection-like. They're different kinds of primal fears. So that's my thoughts on the cauldron of soup. I guess my opinion is pretty obvious. When I first wanted to talk about this, I went looking. I tried to find any kind of Bungie employee saying, yes, we took inspiration from StarCraft, so it would be more than just the similarities. And I couldn't find anything like that. And my conclusion is the similarities are so spot on. StarCraft had to have been on the mind of Bungie's creative team while they were developing Halo. I can't believe they weren't aware of the phenomenon of StarCraft, but they didn't just blatantly copy it. Okay, so that's the point about the old hat StarCraft Halo debate. Here's my second takeaway from the StarCraft games, which is the George Lucas style writing at George Lucas's best. And people have been roasting George Lucas a lot. Some of this goes back to maybe even problems in the original trilogy kind of becoming bigger problems in the prequel movies and the new movies. One reason I would recommend StarCraft after playing it is the story is simple. It's sort of simple video game story from the 90s, but it kicks a lot of butt. They worked very well within the limitations of the medium. And the dialogue, where it's kind of goofy, I think imitates how George Lucas would write a style of dialogue where it's hard for me to pin down what that style is in a word. It's somewhat campy. It's really fast-paced. And George Lucas is the person who typifies this writing style. And an example of this might be Anakin Skywalker complaining about sand. I hate sand. It's coarse and rough and it gets everywhere. Or Princess Leia saying to Grand Moff Tarkin, I recognized your foul stench the moment you stepped aboard. Lucas was a nerd, and this comes across in how he writes dialogue. And sometimes even the actors would struggle with some of this cheesy dialogue he would write. But I think in the original trilogy, it works. And the reason I think it works is you read these characters as human beings who will sometimes say goofy things. Laugh it up, fuzzball. Okay, it's just sort of a goofy, smarmy comment for Han Solo to give to Chewbacca. It doesn't always have to be stiff and serious and somber all the time. But it's not just. But on the other hand, on the other side of the extreme is it's not getting so cheesy. It's completely off-putting. I think Anakin Skywalker complaining about sand, trying to come on to a girl, that's where it got way too much. It was terrible. No one can believe this. What is my computer doing? It's flashing all these messages at me. Sorry. Simultangentum, guys. We're doing it live. So StarCraft emulates that George Lucas-y vibe by occasionally having the characters say kind of cheesy comments, but it works because it gives you a smile in the midst of what could be a somber and long game session. These are multi-hour long game sessions, so just one or two laughs helps break that up and make the experience more memorable. In Brood War, Phoenix, who is a Protoss, he's kind of an old school badass warrior. Well, he has this cute tete-a-tete with Jim Raynor, who's sort of the main male character. And what does he say? Phoenix says, I may be, like 400 years older than you, young Rainer, but I can still, how do you, Terran, say it, throw down with the best of them. It's so 90s. It's so Sonic the Hedgehog, juice and jelly time. But it works because it's believable that characters in this universe would have, funny things they would say from time to time. A little cringe humor is okay because cringe humor can happen in real life. So you can add a little cringe humor or dad humor to a semi-serious story without going too far with it. Use it as a spice in the stew, not as the meat. And another example would be Kerrigan, who used to be this sort of heroic, badass human who got infested and turned into like this evil alien queen. They're getting ready. Suma spoiler, by the way. I'm spoiling details from the story of Starcraft. 20-year-old spoiler warning. So she's getting ready for her final confrontation with all the humans, and she sort of says as an offhanded comment, "I'm pretty much the queen bitch of the universe at this point," and I laughed out loud when I first saw that because to this point she's been a fairly serious generic evil threat. She wants to take over the world, and that sort of cutesy way of describing herself, it's great because that's technically she is that. She is the queen bitch of the universe, but to hear her call herself that, it'd be like maybe up to that point she's sort of like Lord Sauron. She's this evil Cruella de Vil, Lord Sauron, Lord Voldemort type of character, but then she has a fun personable moment, and it's memorable. So what I think StarCraft is illustrating is using a few goofy moments to add a little flavor, to add a little humor, without beating you over the head with it. And the story is a product of its time, of 1999. Really cheesy cutscenes, really bad CGI, okay voice acting, but I think it's an excellent example of people working within the limitations of the time period to actually tell a story. And I have not watched anything with StarCraft 2. I may because I don't care about spoilers that much, but I want to play StarCraft 2 because the story of StarCraft 1 is compelling, and I want to see what happens next. Those were my 2 points. Yep. So StarCraft illustrates a George Lucas style of adding humor to your script without beating the viewer, the player, over the head with too much of it. The similarities between the Halo franchise and the StarCraft franchise are there, and I think they are an illustration of the process of storytelling and of taking elements from things you like and adapting it. I found some really cool stuff. I want to do some shout outs. So a contributing factor for me getting back into StarCraft was Jay Barrino Plays. He does Let's Plays, not of the main, he has done some Let's Plays of the main campaign, but he mostly does Let's Plays of custom campaigns. Because StarCraft has such a wide audience, they have a really vibrant community of people making maps and custom missions for StarCraft, including some really obscure pieces of StarCraft's history. Like there were these third-party developers who made official add-ons for StarCraft that Blizzard is kind of embarrassed about, like Zelda CDI style stuff. And he will play through these obscure campaigns, and he'll do commentary on some of the old cheesy characters from them, the cheesy voice acting. And I think I might, one of the reasons I'm watching Jay Barrino Plays is I want to get into custom campaigns for StarCraft. I've heard there's some really good ones. So if you know of any really good, really fun to play StarCraft custom campaigns, let me know and I'll try to check them out, figure out how I can play them. Check out Jay Barrino Plays. He's got a fun channel. He's doing a very unique kind of content, and if you're a StarCraft fan, I think you're going to dig it. Help me get into StarCraft. I've seen a few other fun videos that are StarCraft related, but that's the main one I want to plug. So I love you guys, and I will catch you later. What is it? I should have a StarCraft related exit for this kind of video. Come on, this is one of the flaws of not scripting. My life for cartoon Great Danes. You must construct additional cartoon Great Danes. Peace out.